Hello, hello.
Hello, good evening. My name is John Lawrence. I'm the Cathedral Village Community Association Chair, and I'll be your moderator tonight. I'm joined by Paul Deshane on the soundboard. Welcome to the Cathedral Village School Board Trustee Q&A and Ward 3 Council Candidate Forum. Thanks all for attending both in person, and we've got hopefully some folks online. Our school board trustee candidate is Sarah Truszkowski, and our Ward 3 council candidates tonight are David Froh and Faaiq Tanveer. For our members of the audience, forms are available at the front table to submit questions to the candidates. Volunteers will collect the submitted questions throughout the event. We ask that you keep your questions short and please refrain from using offensive or combative language. The format for tonight is as follows. Sarah will start us off with a 45-minute Q&A. It will then be followed by our candidate forum. Each candidate will be given a 2 minutes for introductory remarks. Afterwards, the Community Association will ask 2 questions, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. After those questions are read, submitted audience questions will be read, and each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond. At the end of the event, each candidate will be given 1 minute for their closing remarks. So, I guess so. I guess we will be starting with the Q&A for Sarah. I guess so. You can do it.
Hello? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Truszkowski. Oh, I'm going to start my stopwatch here. And I live in Subdivision 5 with my family. We live quite near to here in this neighborhood. I have 3 kids, and my partner Rob is here tonight. Our kids attend 2 public schools. One is in grade 7 at Connaught, and the other is in grade 10 at Campbell. And my oldest daughter, she has just started at the U of S in Saskatoon. So that's a bit about my family. I am an artist and an art teacher. I have a show coming up at the Estevan Art Gallery this month. And I also teach art classes from my home studio, but I used to be a high school visual arts teacher. I have 2 degrees in education, including a master's in education, and I also have a degree in fine arts. My family a lot of us are educators. My mom was a teacher her whole life. My partner teaches at the U of R, and my daughter's just starting in education at the U of S. And I'm just telling you that because I come from a family that really respects public education. My priorities in the last 4 years and just in general have been early years growth, mental health and well-being, poverty reduction strategies, diversity, equity and inclusion, Indigenous education, and generally safe, equitable and engaging schools for all of our kids. I'm very engaged with the 10 schools in my subdivision. I attend many of the SCC meetings, many of the pancake breakfasts or barbecues. Anything I'm invited to, I try to get to those. And I'm really involved with the community too. I have volunteered with many different organizations over the years, and right now I volunteer with the Arts Festival. I'm the visual arts coordinator. That might change. I'm not sure what my role is going to be this year. But I'm just an engaged trustee and human who really cares about the community. And public education. Public education is a public service that is incredibly important to all of us, to our children, and to our future. And we need to protect it. Thank you.
All right. Do you have any questions?
Paul, I do have like a bunch of other stuff I wanted to talk about, but we could do that after the questions, or yeah. I can take the questions.
Sorry, we've never done a forum like this before, so we're making it up as we go along.
At some point, I'll tell you the accomplishments that our board has done.
Okay.
Yeah. you want me to go? Okay, okay. So you need me to fill in the blanks here for a minute. So I have brought with me today some of the accomplishments that our board has done in the last 4 years since I've been a trustee. And so I'll just go through these with you because I think we've worked really hard. We are a board that works very, very hard. And we've done a lot of great things. We've reviewed the school resource officer program. We now are involved with the recruitment, hiring, monitoring, overseeing training and development of school resource officers in our schools. We also did a review of our associate schools, which are Regina Huda School, Regina Christian School, and Harvest City Christian Academy. And now there is an expectation of compliance to all of our APs and much higher accountability of these 3 schools, which I think is important. We have reviewed many of the APs. As I might be saying the word AP a lot, it means administrative procedures. It kind of just means the rules that guide all of the schools in Regina Public Schools. So we've reviewed many of the APs in Regina Public, and we've brought forward 4 new ones. One on diversity, equity, and inclusion, one on students and gender and sexual diversity, one on school playgrounds project, accessibility, equity, development, and maintenance, and one on accessible menstrual products in schools. I did write a full report on poverty in 2022 called Poverty in Regina Public Schools, and I continue to push for poverty reduction strategies. Our board brought forward a resolution to the provincial board at the SSBA about advocating for a national school food program, which the SSBA now does advocate for. And around free transit, I've spoke at City Council and to try to get free transit for our children and youth in the city. Locally, while the Crescent School name was changed already from Davin to Crescent, I made sure to push to make sure that the Davin name was covered. And so you will notice if you go to the Crescent School that you don't even see the old Davin School name. We increased Indigenous education and land-based learning programs. We now offer 4 Cree programs in elementary schools and 2 in high schools. We have a Michif program at McDermott Community School and land-based learning programs at Campus Regina Public that's available for all of our high school students. We also hired a consulting agency to perform energy audits across our division and to analyze our schools and the transportation in our schools to see how we can lower the carbon footprint in the very large division that we run. And we focus on early years literacy. We are now having more children in K to 3 that are reading at grade level, and they've improved those scores just in the last couple of years. So we're really proud of improving that for our early years kids. And we have a new director who is very keen, and he just started this summer, and he's already visited 3/4 of the 57 schools that we have in our division. So that's pretty impressive, and I'm proud of what he's done.
Okay. I've got a question here from Ron. Please explain objectively what is and why it has become a contentious issue in education. And maybe if I could have Ron clarify
the pronoun policy. That's what you're asking about.
Forget to put that in. Why has the pronoun policy become so contentious, recently, and why?
I think
And
that.
what actually objectively is it?
So there's now a bill. It's called the Bill of Parents' Rights, Bill 137, and kids up to the age of 16 have to get permission from their parents to change their pronoun in schools. I thought that Bill 137 was terrible. I don't think it was, I know it was done with no consultation to the school divisions or school boards whatsoever. And I think that it was something that did not focus on educational outcomes. I think that there are a small group of people and specialized groups who are really stirring the pot and putting a focus on something that is harming individuals. Yeah. So yeah, I think I said this at another forum, but I'll say it again. I think that when the most powerful men in the province are targeting the most vulnerable kids, it's wrong.
All right. We've got another question here from Andrew. Teachers might not secure the language they need to deal with class complexities through arbitration. How would the school board use the money promised by the province to deal with these issues? Is the provincial funding enough to deal with these problems?
Okay, good question, Andrew. Complexity is a huge issue in our schools. It's especially a big issue for school boards, large school boards like Regina Public Schools. Just to set the stage, Regina Public Schools is a division that we accept everyone. We do not discriminate or turn people away because of their religion, because of their language or lack of English or French language. We accept everyone no matter the special needs and no matter their behavior, no matter anything, you belong and you are welcome at Regina Public Schools. We offer already all kinds of specialized intensive supports programs in our schools that help already to deal with some of the concerns that comes along with complexity. We have programs around vocational studies, around hearing and vision impairment, we have a quiet high school and a quiet elementary school to deal with kids with chronic anxiety. We have all kinds of programs already in our schools that help teachers and help everyone deal with the complex needs in our schools. The truth is that our division is growing. Every day it's growing. Since September 1st, 800 newcomers have gone through the Multicultural Newcomer Welcome Center at Regina Public Schools. 800. And since a year ago, like between September 30th this year and a year ago, we've gone up by almost 900 kids. So we are growing and growing and growing, and the funding is not growing in the same manner. So we need more funds. We need more teachers. We need more specialists. We need more professionals of all stripes I don't necessarily do that, but all different kinds of professionals. We need them in our schools. We need more funding to help deal with those. And Regina Public Schools does do a really good job of trying to find solutions to deal with the complex needs in our schools.
Hey, Sarah. So I've got a question that was texted to me by Emily. Now that Holy Rosary has closed, Cathedral has one fewer elementary school, and both Crescents and Connaught are quite full. With the city pushing to increase populations in core neighborhoods through infill and densification, what can the board do to preserve or even expand school capacity in inner city neighborhoods like ours?
Okay, I do know Connaught has all the portables, they call them relocatables now, relocatables that they are allowed on that space. I know that the Crescent School is very full. The classes there, they got more and more kids than they were expecting. What to do with those kids in the city? I don't know. I don't know. In other schools, they have changed dance studios to classrooms. They have changed libraries to classrooms. We've done that. My youngest goes to Connaught. So that has happened over the years where the hallways become classrooms and things like that. Our director is acting very creatively, and he has asked in other areas of the city it's already past, you know, maximum capacity sort of thing. So, you know, the Harbor Landing area, a lot of the south areas of the city are the schools are very, very full, and we need more schools immediately. But we have asked the Catholic schools if we can rent some space from there, and just because that, you know, we need to think outside the box, and sometimes something like that could be an idea. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. I suspect probably not, but we can get creative, and it's a good problem to have, that we are needing more schools than to be closing down more schools, because 20 years ago that's what was happening, is schools were closing. So even though it's frustrating, it's difficult, it's not ideal, and we do need to address it, it is a better concern to have than having to be closing schools.
All right, we have,
No, I just wanted to make a comment because I'm from Sacred Heart, which is a Catholic school in the area. So we were built as the second biggest elementary school in Regina. So we are not past capacity at the point where we're adding portables or taking over library space or anything like that. And we've got 460, and we took most of the kids from Holy Rosary, but at the same time, a lot of the kids that we've taken in, and also the newer kids that we've had, we're at like record numbers, over 60 kids, let's say, in kindergarten and in earlier grades. So we are going to get to that point in the future.
Yeah, this is a concern not just for Regina
Yeah,
Public,
the same,
it's,
yeah.
I think, for both big school divisions. Yeah.
So I was really pleased to hear that K-3s, you have them reading at their grade level. I'm wondering about children in grades 4 through 6, because those kids, they're very, like, their introduction to school was hugely disrupted by the pandemic. And I feel, just from kids I know, that they're still behind. And I'm wondering if there's a plan to help them.
Yeah, so it's a misconception that school boards and school divisions only talk about gender and pronouns and stuff like that. But mostly, kids in our schools are focusing on reading, are focusing on writing, are focusing on math, science, all that core stuff. And yes, there is a focus more on the early years. It's because there is a lot of research that showed that if kids do better with their reading really early on, there's more likelihood, like by grade 3, there's more likelihood they're going to graduate. So if we can get kids really young reading, then it's a better likelihood that we're going to have more successes in life. And, you know, more kids are going to graduate, more kids are going to be able to go on and have, you know, fruitful lives. But don't fear about those other ages. I have a child in grade 7, they're still reading, they're still focusing on writing and math and all those important things too. Their teachers work hard in our schools. They have lots of information and learning and knowledge, and they are sharing it with those grades 4, grades 5, grade 6. Now, whether you like the way, you know, one teacher, one class, I don't know what the example is that you have in your head, but, you know, every teacher is different and they'll do it in different ways, but those kids are not being forgotten. Every grade is important, and every child in all of those grades is getting attention around those important things.
I don't know if it's been asked yet, we got here a bit late, but we have a lot of newcomers to Canada, and what kind of programs do you have in place, or is the funding available to help these new people to Canada integrate into our educational system, and, you know, primarily English as a second language, and what do you have going on with that?
For the people on the internet, your question was about what is the school board doing for and schools doing for newcomers to Canada?
Thanks, Randy. I have a personal connection to newcomers in Canada. I helped bring 11 newcomers, and I'm friends with many newcomers to Canada who have children who are in our schools right now. And I know that there is huge pressures on the EAL staffs and programs, and we need more of them. It's not perfect, but there is a lot of great work being done in our schools for these kids. We do at Regina Public have a multicultural newcomer welcome center that helps these newcomer families figure out where to go, navigate the system, figure out what schools they should be at, and how to, get the bus and all the forms and information. There is a lot of support for those kids, but to be honest, it is not enough, and it is an overwhelming amount of newcomers that come into Regina Public Schools, but we take them and we're doing our best. And the thing that school board trustees can do is advocate with the provincial government and let them know these pressures on our schools, and that we do need increased sustainable funding for kids and for programs like these. We also feel it a little more heavily in the bigger centers like Regina and Saskatoon, because this is where a lot of the newcomers come to. But it's on our radar, and we are working on it, and we have great programs in place, but it's also a stressor that needs attention.
All right, any other questions from the audience? All right, I guess you, yeah.
Okay, I did a little why you should vote for me. You should vote for me, Sarah Truszkowski. I'm a very hard worker. I'm very prepared. I do a lot of research for all of our meetings, and for anytime I'm doing something like this, I do my homework for it. I'm a mom. I have direct contact and links and information in our Regina Public Schools, 2 of them right now. I'm very engaged. I try to get to my 10 schools as often as possible, and I really listen to parents, to teachers, to students, to everybody, and I work hard in being engaged. I've taken steps with our board to make education, learning, and belonging at Regina Public Schools better. I use this position to speak up for what's right, to communicate with the provincial government, to communicate with our partners, to make our schools better for everyone. And I do care about human rights, and I thought the Bill 137 was terrible. My heart was broken when that went through, and I support LGBTQ kids. I support trans kids and families, and I will be a strong voice for public education.
All right, I guess now we'll move on to the ward councillor candidate forum portion of tonight. So we'll have both the candidates come forward and take their seats. Okay. And just a reminder for the folks in the audience, if you have questions for our candidates tonight, we have question forms available at the front. So just to go over the format for the forum tonight, Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for introductory remarks. 3 minutes? Oh. Yeah, sorry, apologies. 3 minutes for introductory remarks, after which the Community Association will ask 2 questions, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. Afterwards, we will be taking questions from the audience, and at the end of the event, each candidate will be given 2 minutes for closing remarks. All right, I'll begin with opening statements.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. I was sort of thinking as I came in here today that some of my most formative years were actually playing floor hockey in here as my mother and father, which are here, Deb, Froh and Faaiq Tanveer, sort of met with their own friends, progressive activists in the area, whether it was nuclear non-proliferation, whether it was reconciliation, whether it was a peace movement, and sort of this community was a community that raised me. And so I want to start off by acknowledging my parents, who have lived their values and continue to do so and are my inspiration for why I care about public service. And of course, public service takes many forms. It's not just those who are elected. I also want to acknowledge Andrew Stevens, our outgoing councillor for the area. Next to people come up to me saying that they know my mom and thanking my mom for teaching them, probably Andrew's next as I've been door knocking, and people have thanked him not just for living his values, but for the inordinate amount of work and preparation that he has put in to represent the area, and I think he deserves a round of applause. My interest in public service stems from an ethic that I believe that we should measure our progress as a community by how our most vulnerable are doing, and that we all have our own unique agency and constituency to make the world a better place. And so I believe in public service. I currently work as Vice President of the Regina Food Bank, but I've spent many years in my life building community in different ways, whether that be working to build small businesses, whether that be working to help tell our community's story, whether that be working with young offenders to help sort of realize a unique path to them, even if that path is harm reduction. For me, I have a 9-year-old daughter. My daughter Lydia is here, an 11-year-old son. And if they so choose, I want Regina to be a community that they live in. And so for me, I want us as a community to reject pessimism and cynicism. I tell my little brothers and everyone who will listen to delete just bins and shove your neighbor's sidewalk and volunteer and use your voice. And this is my small way to try to make Regina a more inclusive, sustainable, and equitable sort of community. And so I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm glad that you made it here tonight too. This is awesome. Yeah, thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Faaiq Tanveer. It same rhymes like Mike, but with an F. So that's an easy way to say the name. So it's Faaiq Tanveer. I'm very thankful for all of you to come in, and I'm very thankful for the Cathedral Village to give us a chance to speak in front of such a beautiful audience. I have been calling Regina my home for past 10 years. So it's been 10 years since I'm living in Regina. I truly value the passionate and supportive community in Regina. I am a devoted husband and a proud dad. I have a son who is 4 years old. He's always on his toes. I personally believe he got so much energy, like he can power a small city. He's always on the go. He's always on the go. Professionally, my expertise lies in accounting and finance. I started my career in Canada as a salesperson. Then I moved on to assistant tax profession, and then I ended up working as an auditor. I have worked in Pakistan as an auditor as well. Recently, I'm engaged in a business, and I'm also part of a family business as well. One of the main things I believe is like the saying that change is constant in life. I want to bring a positive change in Regina. That's one of the things that make me think that it's time I should give back something to the city. I should work for the city. I should help the people to let them know, to raise a public awareness for what's happening politically around the city, especially for our youngsters. We need to engage them more, that they should understand that each and every level of politics can make a big difference in their lives. During my term, I have committed that I will be working as a full-time counselor. I'm coming up as a full-time, giving my full energy to Regina, my full time to Regina, because I think that this thing comes with a strong responsibility. a significant responsibility that we are dealing with people of over 200,000 population. So this thing needs a lot of time, a lot of energy, and I am committed to put that thing in. One of the main things I will focus on my term, if I get elected, will be prioritizing public safety, infrastructure, foster our economic growth with our local businesses. That plays an important role in our economy. And then one of the big things will be inclusive society, where everyone should feel valued. And thank you so much for being here, and we will go with the questions, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
All right, we'll start with our first question regarding lead service connections. Cathedral has among the most lead service connections in the city. While Saskatoon is committed to replacing their lead connections by 2029, Regina's plan replaces lead connections over another 12 years by 2036 at a cost of $36 million. How do you respond to Cathedral residents' concerns that Regina is moving too slowly to replace lead pipes? We'll start with David.
Well, first, in my view, this is an infrastructure question. It's a health question. And because it's a health question, I think there's an unfair burden on property taxpayers to address this. So undoubtedly we need to expedite it, and undoubtedly we can do that. We can address this likely within a 5-year time frame with probably closer to $50 million. But in my view, and I'll get back to this many times, I think the time is right, particularly given the provincial election, to go to the provincial government and ask for an urban strategy. So yes, we can do blood testing with the SHA. Yes, we can increase grants for the private side of this, but we need to go to the provincial government and likely the federal government and indicate quite clearly that this is a priority for our community. So I'll certainly be pressing for it, but I think there is an undue burden on the people of this community to replace what I view as less an infrastructure question and more a health question.
All right.
All right, thank you. I agree with David Froh that it's more like a health issue. And being a public servant, this should be the priority of our people who got elected on the council. They have planned to finish this thing by 2036. They have already done some, but there are still more than 3,500 houses left in Cathedral that this lead issue need to be resolved. And especially with the issue with the youngsters that can cause, like WHO, World Health Organization, have declared that it can cause the learning problem. It's kind of a developing problem in the kids as well, with the moms who are expecting kids. So those are the things that should be addressed at priority. I personally believe that the council should have planned it way before, and they started planning it 2021. Instead, it should be planned way before than that, because it's a matter of health. It's something that's affecting each and everyone who's living in the community. Water is something that we rely on. It's a nature's gift on us. So we should be working on those things on a priority basis. Instead, making a plan of 15 years or 20 years, spending $36 million, and we should spend more on those things and assist our people to have a good water that's essential for their life.
All right, moving on to our next question regarding housing and zoning. Council has recently passed extensive zoning changes as part of their application to the Housing Accelerator Fund. As a result, a considerable portion of Cathedral has been declared a secondary intensification zone, where multifamily homes up to 4 stories will be able to be built by right. What will you do as Ward 3's councillor to prepare Ward 3 and Regina in general for increased density, particularly in the intensification zones? We'll start with Faaiq.
Thank you, John. On the housing refill, I did some research and I wrote actually some stuff that I would like to go through. That the city of Regina have applied for the housing infill with the Ottawa in June, and most of the people didn't know about that. And they got the approval in October for $35 million grant. So infill, they say, as on their part, that the infill housing has a potential to support affordable housing. However, the cost of building these houses can be quite high, especially in this inflation. For many I have traveled across Canada. I have seen a lot of downtowns. I personally believe that we have lots of space around Regina. Instead of densifying our population, we can go with the expanding. We can expand the city. That sounds to me like a more proper solution instead of having problem of parking, problem of privacy. They say it's gonna improve the green spaces. But on the other side, without the proper testing of the land soil, they're gonna rebuild on those properties, and testing those soil gonna increase the cost of construction as well. So, and the very last thing, I was talking with one of the persons, I'm knocking door, talking with people, she mentioned a very good point. She told me that if I'm gonna have a house beside my neighborhood, and there's no sunlight coming in my house, what's gonna happen with my plants and trees that I'm growing? So we need to come up, making before any plans, we need to coordinate with our people, with the neighborhood, that what they think about it. If the results should be in favor of everyone. It should support the people who are supporting us. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I hope we have an opportunity as the night goes on to talk more broadly about affordability as it relates to rentals, but also as it relates to home ownership. But as it relates to the cathedral, if we think of what makes a livable city, density isn't just about sort of being an interconnected, sort of applicable, walkable community. It's also about sustainability. And so when we think about how we address the climate crisis, density is as important as it is providing affordable places for our neighbors to live. In a lot of ways, Cathedral is ready for density, so long as it's done right. We do have the infrastructure, we do have the schools, albeit overcrowded, and we do have the green space. I think the key as we do density is how we engage with the community and how we engage with the service providers to make sure that we're ready to support that density. So density involves infrastructure, making sure that we have the infrastructure required, but it'll also make sure that we're meeting with Sarah and Sarah's colleagues to make sure that I'm not a demographer, right? But I don't think anyone would have believed that we're gonna have a 220% increase in self-identified visual minorities, which is wonderful for our community, but some of which require additional supports. Right, we have, roughly 99% of all population growth in this province is occurring in 4 urban centers, and that's unlikely to end. So I do support density, and as we move further south, it's really important to respect the built history of some of these communities and neighborhoods. But for me, it's how we engage, right? It's how we reach out to our neighbors, it's how we reach out to the schools, and it's how we reach out with everybody in this room to make sure that we're doing it in the right way.
All right, so we have an audience submitted question. Can you please explain the causes of homelessness and what is the best way to deal with it? David.
Yeah, well, dealing with the unhoused crisis is complex, but I think we have to start off, particularly those of us that have the sort of the privilege that I certainly do of recognizing, that the unhoused and the homeless crisis has many factors. It has to do with institutionalized racism, institutionalized poverty. It has to do with the acuity of the mental health and addiction crisis. And I do think I work at the Regina Food Bank. 95% of all clients at the Regina Food Bank are renters. And I can tell you that if you're making minimum wage with several children and you might be working 60 hours a week, one, you're likely using the food bank. But if your car breaks down and you're working at Walmart, you are so close to the edge. Right? So when you meet the unhoused and you meet people that are living rough, everyone has a unique story, but I think we have to acknowledge that there are people that are living on the edge. So in my view, we have institutionalized poverty and racism, and it's very hard to be poor in our community. There are many barriers. Saying that, I think the Everyone is Home report, I suspect we'll get to it later, has many practical steps that we can take as a city of Regina in concert with the federal and provincial government and civil society to treat these neighbors with dignity, because they are our neighbors, and to put in place actionable steps so that no one is living on the street, particularly as we get closer to the winter time.
So I agree on this, that homelessness is a big issue in Regina. The city is expected to invest over $7 million to make the shelter homes. I agree on one part, the shelter homes, we do need that for the homeless people. But will it solve the root cause of it? What is the root cause that we are having so many people on homelessness? I have visited Carmichael, Harbor Souls. I have seen the people living in the tents in this cold weather over there. There is a big issue of drug overdose in our city. We need to address those issues. There is issue of housing costing, rising housing tax increases, affordability problem, and there is a lack of job opportunity. We need to create more, help local businesses, create more jobs. In this way, I personally believe if we can go to the root cause, we would be able to solve these issues. Instead of just making shelter homes, investing more money, it will not solve the root cause. We have to go to the root cause of the problem. Thank you.
All right. Which specific infrastructure projects do you feel should be prioritized in the next few years? We'll start with Faaiq.
So talking about infrastructure, I personally believe that infrastructure is one of the things that plays a key role in the development of a city. Traveling around Regina, there are so many roads in our neighborhoods that have never been done, maybe tons of years ago. We need to focus on those to make our people who are paying for the taxes, their lives more easier, because that's our money going out. The second thing on the part of infrastructure, I would like to expand Regina. Expansion, I believe, brings in more opportunities for the businesses. I always give the examples of the Costco right now. There was nothing before there. Now we have a Costco, we have a lot more businesses over there. Beside the businesses, there are more people, more housing coming up. So that means we are creating more housing spaces for the people as well. Investing in infrastructure is one of the key aspects, but right now the city, I believe, is going for the glamour projects. In fact, heavily investing in those glamour projects, which is not making the life of our people easy. It's going to increase our taxes that we are paying. It's going to put more burden on our lives. So I believe infrastructure is important, but it goes with the expansion, not with densifying and making things worse for the people. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think it's important to start with the principle that you need to invest in the type of community that you want. And there are those under the guise of austerity that would say we need to freeze taxes and we need to look at some of these large CapEx projects and put them on hold. And what will happen very quickly is we'll become an unlivable city. And so the priorities, that I would have at the very top would include certainly lead pipe replacement in this area, but I certainly support the aquatic center. Rob is here and they've done a wonderful job. Having an aquatic center is not just about a place to take swimming lessons and do competitive swimming and diving. It's about being a healthy community and a livable community as a winter city. I support the expansion of the Devonian pathway and more active transportation that makes us more walkable and more bikeable. And I think lastly I would say, and I do have an economic development background, and I talk extensively when I talk to businesses, social infrastructure is as important in a modern city as is hard infrastructure. And so we talk about how we help our most vulnerable, and we talk about things like libraries, we talk about places like we are tonight. The social infrastructure is what makes talent want to run a great school, want to run a great profit, or run a company. And so as we think about the hard infrastructure, undoubtedly critical, let's not lose sight of the fact that social infrastructure makes our communities livable too.
What do you feel are priorities to addressing business development and sustainability in Regina as a whole, and specifically here in the Cathedral area? We'll start with David.
Yeah, thanks.
We're landlocked in the exact perfect place, right? And for me, we have the wonderful fortune of being surrounded by the largest dryland farming sort of operation in the entire world. And I think there's incredible opportunity as a city to move up the value chain, harness the opportunity around plant protein, food ingredient manufacturing, food manufacturing. The other part is we have a traditional energy and mining supply chain base in this community. It is true, and it's very carbon-intensive industry. But the benefit is we not only have wind, and we not only have solar resources, we actually have the engineers and the instrumentationists and the metal fabricators and the construction companies to harness the green energy opportunity. And quite honestly, if we can do it here in Regina, where there are many thousands of families that derive their income from those sectors, we can do it anywhere. And so when I look at the opportunity around a sustainable economy and the green economy, really nowhere else in Canada but Regina can we point to that opportunity. So I would say the green economy, transportation logistics, and undoubtedly, we have to feed more people between today and 2050 than we fed in the entirety of humanity. right? And we're landlocked in the exact perfect place to do that. So we have to look, as we build economy in a city, at what we materially have the ability to influence. And both of those things we do.
So sustainable economy is something that we reuse the resources, and we also leave the resources for the future generations. That's one of the key roles in nowadays the society. The way things are moving on, I personally believe that savings can play an important role. We should be working on savings and investing them properly around the city and giving more opportunities to the people, bringing up, especially our youngsters, to bring up some new ideas from the university students, giving them an opportunity to come up and let us know that what they think. Because the way the technology and AI is moving on, it can play an important role. So I personally think investing more in those things can bring more opportunity and more sustainable economy to us.
What steps might you take to increase community engagement in Ward 3 to ensure residents' voices are heard in your voice at council? We'll start with Faaiq.
As I mentioned that I will be running as a public servant. And being a public servant, one of the important things is community engagement. If I am elected by the people, I should be listening to the people. And being community engagement, I would love to have a forum or a referendum before any meeting, that people should know what's going on and what's happening around them, or what's happening with their tax money. So I would love to increase public awareness about what's happening in our council meeting regularly with the people. I met one of the gentlemen today, and he told me that probably it's been 3 years he last time see the MU students. He's doing a great job, but on the other side, that's to me, it sounds like there's no public engagement. So, and as I mentioned, this is a significant responsibility. Being a councillor, we will be dealing with thousands of people, and this thing comes with lots of responsibility. So public engagement is one of the key factors. We should have a referendum before every council meeting to come in the council and let them know, this is what our people think. This is what our people thoughts are. And then we can come up with a proper plan that will help public at large. Thanks.
Being elected is an absolute privilege. It's a very humbling honor when your neighbors vote for you or put up a sign for you and put their trust in you. I would say that Andrew has been a model of not only sort of transparency, but overall engagement in the information that he puts out. And so I want to acknowledge that. I've knocked on over 4,000 doors so far since June. And I have found that to be an incredibly strong way to engage with community, because you meet people where they're at. And I certainly commit to continue to door knock, and not just at election time, but all the time. And I hope that when folks open up the door, many of those faces I recognize, and it's because I volunteer, it's because I coach, it's because I live here, and I've chosen to raise my family here. And I'm not sure there's one secret way necessarily to how you more broadly engage the community, other than a principle, a guiding principle that if you're elected, which is that you have an obligation and a privilege to represent the community and to continue to engage in them. And that means showing up at the marches, and showing up at the open houses, and showing up on the doorstep. And I think I'll just wrap up by saying finally, it also means doing the work, right? So there is an immense amount of work to do to be prepared. And I view it as an obligation, if elected, to be prepared for those council meetings. And I certainly commit to do that. It's one thing to knock on a door, and I commit to come back and knock on those doors. But more than anything, I commit to not only stay engaged, but to be prepared when those council meetings happen.
Next question. Can you please comment on your campaign donations regarding where your major donation dollars have been generated? We'll start with David.
So I made the decision to not seek or receive endorsement from any third party. I believe really strongly that municipal politics, thankfully, is one of the last places where we don't have partisan politics. Now, we have very antiquated, in my view, regressive election laws around third-party expenditure sort of limits, but my donations come from my neighbors, I've, I guess, yet to receive a corporate donation. That doesn't mean it won't happen, but these are folks that live around our community, and I will certainly disclose those, when the time is right. My family is also funding a lot of this ourselves, so we intend to spend close to the max, and we'll invest materially, but we've been very grateful to be supported by many dozens of community members that we're surrounded by.
So on the part of my campaign donations, it's mainly by my family and myself. I didn't ask anyone for the donations. Even I had some friends who came up and they want to help me out with this thing, but then as I'm running independent. So I thought the best part for me right now is to invest by my pocket, and if I get elected, I would be able to understand that the responsibility I have done from my pocket, I should work hard for that. And every matter, all the money I have invested, it should count on that I have invested, I have worked hard for it, and I have to serve my people. So the main thing is, I didn't get any donations from anyone, even I didn't accept it. It's mainly me and my brothers who are doing it. Thank you.
How will you increase revenue for the city to pay for current and future infrastructure investments? Starting with Faaiq.
Yes, that's a very, very big thing for us, increasing the revenues of our city. So I personally believe, as I mentioned, the solution for many things is in expansion. We need to expand Regina. We need to expand Regina to bring in more businesses. When the new businesses will come in, we will have our local businesses to grow as well. And I personally believe that's one of the major things. We can get the revenues, like we can have investors. We want to make a huge project. We don't have to solely rely on the tax money, or we don't have to rely on the bank loans. We can have our investors from our city who can invest with us and raise the funds. That will reduce the liabilities on the city. And also we will have funds, and we can generate funds. Thank you.
I think those of us that pay attention know that as a municipal corporation, there's very few ways in which the city of Regina can raise revenue. And I actually think we have to acknowledge that if we look at $1 billion infrastructure, that the city of Regina by itself, through property taxes, simply cannot do it, right? And that goes back to the fact that we have an important opportunity, and frankly, the provincial government has an obligation to have an urbanist strategy, given that all the job creation, largely, and employment growth is happening in 4 urban centres, right? We're the youngest city in Canada under the age of 15. We've had a 10-fold increase in new Canadians to our community, which is good. It gives us an opportunity. We have an obligation to rely on the federal and provincial government. Growth does not play for growth. I think we have to acknowledge that. But if we look at the downtown, which used to be 13% of our tax base and now is 11%, and if we look at the industrial developments in our community, right, they undoubtedly pay corporate and provincial tax. We don't see that, but they do pay property tax. And so I think we have to continue to prioritize economic growth that aligns with our values, that aligns with our core clusters. But the reality is the fastest growing cohort of whom I serve at the food bank are people whose main source of income is working, and people are feeling tight. And when I knock on doors, people speak to property taxes and they speak to their water bill, and folks don't mind paying taxes, but I think we have to acknowledge right now that personal disposable income in our community is shrinking, and we as a municipal corporation alone cannot do it by ourselves. We simply can't. The provincial budget is roughly $37 billion. I think there's an opportunity to look to our friends and say, now's the time to invest into your capital city.
Will you support the new swimming pool in our area, given that it is a low barrier way for kids to play and enjoy themselves there year long? Starting with David.
I support a new aquatic center at the site or adjacent to where the Lawson is. We have to realize that there's a lot of low-income young people, particularly in that area, that come to the Lawson. I think moving our aquatic center to the suburbs not only creates barriers for low-income people, but in my mind sort of is contrary to the wishes very clearly espoused by the community during many years of consultation. So I support a new aquatic center. I believe in co-location and collaboration. I think there's a wonderful opportunity to look what goes into that aquatic center. There's a lot of community organizations right now, whether it be the creative arts, whether it be those that are looking to age in place and stay healthy, that are doing capital campaigns that could use access to space. But no, I support the new aquatic center being in and around the area where the Lawson is right now.
So for the new aquatic center, I do support that, but I believe this is not the right time to do it because we are already having a huge debt on our city. And increasing the debt means we ended up paying more interest. Interest is something, a fixed cost that have to go out of the pockets. And investing that at this time, I'm a person who believes more in saving. Save the money, invest on good time. It will create the job opportunities, but at the cost of increasing the housing taxes. That's one of the main sources. Getting loans from the bank, paying more in interest. Those things I believe at this time of heavy inflation, people are suffering. We do make these heavy investments and then later on people pays for that. So I think it's not the right time to do this thing. We can do it later on. It's $272 million, including the geothermal plant, and they have not dig a shovel right now. So once they start, there's a high chance the cost might go up. So I personally believe right now it's not the right time to do. We need to go on the savings at this point, make our community more stronger, build more stronger, and then we can come with those huge projects. Thanks.
If elected, what would be the first motion that you would put before the new council to vote on? We'll start with you, Faaiq. If elected, what would be the first motion that you would put before the new council to vote on?
So I'm talking with the people, knocking on the doors, looking at our city situation right now, looking at the people's life. I think I personally would like to bring a motion that we should have a cap, a tax cap or a rent cap or a transit cap for our seniors. The second thing, for the people in need, who are in special need, and the people on social. We should give them a relaxation, especially to our seniors. They have spent so much time in their life building this city. This is the time for them to have relaxation. Talking with the people, I have seen so many people, they are still working after retirement. And I think it makes me more sad when I see a senior after working 37 years, still working to make money. So I personally believe I would love to bring up this motion that we should have a break for our seniors, people in need, and people on social. Thank you.
I think it's a great answer, and I support free transit for seniors, but also those under the age of 18 for lots of reasons. At risk of answering this question wrong, because I've never passed a motion, and someone's going to tell me that I'm doing it wrong, I have a tie. And the tie is because I've met with all kinds of custodians and nurses and doctors and folks that work in our hospitals that have said, why am I getting parking tickets at all hours of the night? And committed to a nurse the other day to at least look into how we might provide anyone, regardless of your role at one of our hospitals, a parking pass so that you're no longer ticketed if someone's coming to deliver a baby or to move someone. I think the other thing is Trevor Harriet's a hero of mine. And I think one of the ways in which we address climate change or inclusivity or create more equitable communities, really tangible things. And one of the things that I think is really beautiful is this idea to move the grassland area behind the old Cali Clearing Club by the dog park and make it a preserved long term. Now, is that all by itself going to make us a net zero community and rapidly decarbonize? No, but will it provide a space to have those conversations and to create a format where we can do that? I think it's a very actionable step. And I use those two because we're going to have a very new council, right? So I think that as we get to know each other, and as we learn to deal with some very serious issues, including ideally avoiding reconsideration motions over the library and the aquatic center and the homeless shelter, I think we can learn to work together on some very tangible things that are hard to argue against. And I think you gave a great example as well.
Currently, the Regina Police Force charges volunteers for criminal record checks. This is a barrier for low-income people to volunteer. Will you change that? Starting with David.
I coach basketball, I coach football, I volunteer on, and sometimes it is free, right? And sometimes they do charge. We used to, it's likely changed. We used to have the highest per capita volunteerism in all of the country in Regina, or at least Saskatchewan, we'd celebrate that. And so we at the food bank benefit from over 15,000 hours of volunteerism. We have sort of 4 volunteers for every 1 paid staff person. I think it's the very least we can do as a community that leans on our volunteers to not charge them for criminal records, particularly given the very high amount that we invest into our police force already.
Well, I personally believe that if someone is volunteering, time is money. That's what they say. So if already someone is putting a lot of time with us, that's a lot of money from us. So I personally believe that the volunteers shouldn't be charged for the policing. But on the other side, if that motion is coming up, then there should be something that to cover as a revenue for the city, that there should be something. So I believe that we can increase, there is some kind of increase that can be done looking at the city budgets and stuff like that. We can come up, but definitely I will support. If someone is giving time, they're actually giving us money. So we should appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Do we have additional questions from the audience?
Okay, we talked about homelessness and people that are less fortunate. My understanding is it's not just the city of Regina has Regina Housing, we have Sask Housing, we have a lot of empty houses available that need renovations. But it's not easy to just let someone live in a house without having the life skills and the ability to live in the house. Have you ever considered any programs available to help people know how to live in a house? Being a landlord myself, I've been through situations where it has cost me a lot of money to have people live in my house and then leave, not knowing how to live in the house, and it's caused a lot of damage. So we talk about the housing crisis. There's a lot of houses available. I know it takes a lot of capital to bring them up to snuff, but we need to teach people how to live in houses. Have you considered a partnership with the government to be able to do something like that, teach life skills?
I think there's 2 things. I mean, there is a housing first concept and well laid out plans for how we deal with the unhoused. I think Randy asks an important question. So during the civil rights movement in the United States, in an effort to avoid gentrification and African Americans being pushed out of the housing market, they created community land trusts. And community land trusts received some seed capital during the Kennedy years, but largely these are cooperatives and nonprofits and some for-profits. They provided affordable pathway to home ownership. And so the reality is that we have a lot of renters in our community that never receive intergenerational wealth transfer through home ownership, right? Meaning that some Indigenous people, of course, through the Indian Act, have never been able to afford their own home. The benefit of the housing in Heritage, in North Central, and Eastview is that if I were to buy a house there today for $130,000, I've just lost $70,000. However, there's a lot of foreclosed loans, including by our cooperative credit unions. And so what we can do is we can create a community land trust. The city can help with the governance structure. We can have a land bank and a policy framework for how the city interacts with cooperatives, nonprofits, and for-profit developers if they agree to a certain framework. And for the same cost that people are renting today, trapped in a cycle of renting, they can go on a pathway to owning a home. You can hire kids from North Central to renovate those homes. There are wonderful organizations that do that, both greenfield builds and retrofitting. And the fact is, there are hundreds and hundreds of lots. The city can backstop and guarantee the loan. Entity like Connexus or Affinity can provide a 30-year loan amortized over 30 years at a low rate. And quite honestly, I've run the numbers. Really, for marginal capex, you can give someone the opportunity, which is life-changing, to start to own their home. You can even do reversible down payments whereby people receive money to take care of a house in good order. There are organizations like Street Culture and others that have construction firms with Indigenous kids in North Central that are looking for this opportunity. So there's immense opportunity, largely because of how bad it is right now.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for the question. I think when I came to Canada, I started living as a renter. Like I was living in an apartment. So when we rent something, they do take the deposit and stuff for the damage to pay off the things. The second thing is living in a house. It's not something we can teach right off anyone straight away. It takes time, and it's part of the thing that I think in the schooling there is something we can add up. Teaching the kids at a proper age that these are the things that can add up in the society, and living in a house, it requires special manners as well. So those kind of things can happen. But on the other side, one of the main thing is, as I mentioned, our drug overdose. That's one of the main things that's affecting us in many different ways. So again, we have to go back to the root cause. We have to see where things are coming up and how people are suffering with those things.
How will you increase fruit-bearing plants and vegetables in public spaces? For free public harvesting? We'll start with Faaiq.
So this is very interesting because when I came to Canada, I used to drive on the highway going to SAS Polytech, and on the side of university there are so many people who do plant the trees and stuff like that, and I love to go there with my mom sometimes. It's very nice to see those people coming up, and many of them are like at the end of the season they just give out things because they love to do that, and this is something very good for the environment as well. So I personally believe we can make some land outside the city, and we should give it to the people.
Inside the city, we have all kinds of parkland where non-edible plants.
Excuse
Any fruit,
me?
with no food. It's my question. I'm asking about inside the city. What will you do to increase fruit-bearing plants, edible plants for public harvesting, public eating?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Sorry, just to clarify, you mean specifically inside the city? Okay.
Okay. So you just mean specifically inside the city?
Yes.
Okay. Inside the city, I'm sorry, I don't have much idea about this thing.
I know you do a lot of really great work in North Central, and there have been, in the past, I worked with a lot of young offenders that lived in North Central, right? We would take abandoned lots, and we would subsidize the water bill, and we'd do community gardens, and we would teach kids how to garden, and the food would be available to harvest for all. There's wonderful examples over in the crescents of bulb outs and in the boulevards of people growing plants and foods. And that's all important, as is community gardens, that both my parents garden in, and they teach folks how to garden there. I also, think that if we take a step back, we talk about food security as it relates to affordability and as it relates to climate change resiliency. We, and I know it's not your question, but we in around the surrounding, in our area, we actually have everything we need. We do. We have animal protein, we have plant protein, we have dairy, we have horticulture. My dad as a kid would put root vegetables in the garden and dig it out in the middle of February. We can do these things, and I think when you do that, you not only create education and empowerment and a hand up, but you create a broader conversation. Now, the reality is where I work, we move 18,000 pounds of food a day, right? To put that in context, right? And when I even walk around the food bank, just like when you walk around Safeway, you see, blueberries coming from Chile and bananas from Guatemala and, pineapples from Maui or something like that. So we have to have a conversation about what we eat and why and how and source it. But yeah, 100%. We can go to North Central and Heritage and Eastview and Cathedral, and where there's abandoned lots, if we can get access to that lot, we can subsidize the cost to pay for the water and go to community members that have the skills to build plants, and we can grow those plants, and we can teach things, we can harvest those plants, and yeah, we'll feed some people, but we'll also build community as we do so.
Just real quick with the audience questions, we will be taking written submissions. Are there any additional written submissions? We also volunteer passing out the notes here, so we maybe take 5. Real has had some very serious financial issues in the past with little to no accountability. How do you think Real should be run and monitored moving forward?
Yeah, well, maybe the first motion I pass is not taking a step back. One of the things I'll ask administration to do is provide a business case which will do two things. So for one, I don't necessarily expect Real to make money. For part of its business, I expect it to be a good service provider. So if we think of adult safe hockey or ringette or anything that community is doing that has a community good, I think there's a reasonable business case at this point to look at bringing those assets back under city control, right? So we operate rinks and we operate fields and we operate city buildings today. And I would like to see a business case that would explore bringing those assets back under city control. On the for-profit side, I think you give Real a profit mandate. What makes money Real? Well, it's conventions, it's weddings, it's trade shows, it's concerts. We still own the assets. We don't privatize anything. I think at least in the near term, we might have to look at outsourcing how we attract and activate conventions and trade shows so that we make money. There's absolutely no excuse in a city surrounded by all the economic assets we have that we don't have trade shows and conventions there. Now, I'm prepared to see what the outcome of that business case from administration is. But that $4 million that we recently gave, that is operating capital. As I understand it, they'll have to come back again. I think we have to be honest. Structurally, that is a big, big challenge. And anyone that suggests that we can wave a magic wand and fix Real, I think is being disingenuous. But I would like to see a business case that says the city of Regina takes over Real. So you don't just change the governance, you effectively change how Real is structured entirely, because someone correct me, but we effectively still own those assets.
Studied it, it's kind of a thing that's not very clear. Recently, the city of Regina have increased the limit of Real from 9 to 11 million, and it's still working at a break even. It's been decades since Real is working, and when we go there, the ice rinks are full. People don't have enough space. They have to book in advance. The halls are booked, but still we are working on a break even. So I think there should be some proper audit that needs to be done at a high level to come up with the numbers and address the people that what's happening, because that's a question that I've been asked while knocking the doors as well. So I personally believe that we need a proper audit of the things. Those are our assets, but how our assets are being used, that's what we need to know. Thank you.
While I do not live in the Cathedral area, my late wife grew up here and my present partner lives here. I also go to church here. I used to contribute a lot of produce to the community kitchen. Are there any plans to restore the community kitchen?
Well, I will say that community kitchen is important, as I see recently that they are also distributing food on the corner of 13th and near Safeway. So community kitchen is one of the important things. It will feed a lot of people, and especially in this compassionate city where I have seen people love to contribute, love to volunteer, and love to give out the things. It will be a big step to add on to the community kitchen, and in this time of crisis, it will definitely help a lot of people. So definitely it can be added as part of agenda in the meeting that this is something that needs to become up again, and we should have those things in our communities. Thanks.
I think community fridges, the Regina Food Bank, community kitchens, they represent the best and worst of our community, don't they? They're at once a symbol of the failure of our society, that so many people need to turn to the food bank and the community fridge, and then they represent the generosity and care of our community. I've reached out to the Cathedral Community Fridge and offered our services. Again, we spend $1 million a year buying food, but I buy that food, we do rather, at cost at the food bank, and of course we get a lot of donated food. I think the issue, and I suspect those of us in this room agree, is that we have a minimum wage in Saskatchewan that is not a living wage. Right? We have food deserts in our community where they're on a grocery store. We have inadequate supports for unattached males. We've seen New Canadians a year ago, 500 come to the food bank, over 5,000 a month come to the food bank today. So structurally, we have to look at the reason of why people are coming to use food banks and community kitchens and fridges. They are harm reduction, and that's important, right? A hungry tummy can't learn. There's direct causation between being food insecure and high rates of anxiety and heart disease and premature death. And so it's not like we can close these things down. So yes, in the interim, we need to support the community fridge and community kitchens, and yes, the Regina Food Bank, but only as we advocate collectively around how we address the root causes of these issues. Because in the end, it's an education issue, it's a healthcare issue, it's an economic issue. And we try really hard at the food bank to say, it's not just about feeding people, actually. We are part of the healthcare system. We're part of the education system. And of course, there's lower labor force participation rates for those that grow up being food insecure. So I'm not sure I directly answered the question, but I think we should undoubtedly support the community fridge while we advocate forcefully on why people are going there in the first place.
All right, any final submissions?
One right here.
Okay. Oh, I guess there's one in progress.
Yeah.
One in progress.
Almost done.
Any verbal ones? No.
This will be our final question of the night. The previous council voted down two motions that showed a lot of support from numerous delegations. The first was the motion to allow backyard chickens, and the second was the rename of Dudney Avenue. Where do you stand on both of these issues if they came before a council again, and how will you take into account delegations? Starting with Jim.
I see no compelling reason why we can't have backyard chickens, so long as there's some reasonable accommodation of one's neighbors when we talk about climate change and food security. So I'm in favor of supporting backyard chickens, so long as there's some reasonable degree of accommodation of one's neighbors and community. I actually understand chickens are quite quiet, as I've learned from door knocking. Secondly, we're all treaty people, and we're on a path, still an emergent path of reconciliation. And I think it's the very least we can do to change the name of Dudney from not only a profiteer, but someone that quite literally put in place a system of genocide. And so I acknowledge the challenges associated with changing the name. I also acknowledge the fact that I have many Indigenous friends and colleagues whom I respect that believe there are more tangible things to advance reconciliation. But it seems to me the prevailing sentiment and the prevailing sort of call to action amongst Indigenous people that I know and amongst those that care about reconciliation is to not name a major thoroughfare in our city after someone that was an architect of genocide in residential schools.
So the culture, like I came from Pakistan, we have agriculture over there, and we used to keep chickens in our home. We used to keep chicken in our home. We still have some in our village area. We have chickens in our houses. Even we have goats as well. So I'm not sure how big animal can be in the backyard, but on the other side, I support that thing, and I personally believe it's a good activity for us, especially with the chickens and for the kids as well. On the part of the Dudney, I came to Canada. I started studying about the history. I learned about the history. I have worked with the First Nations. I have traveled more than 20 First Nation lands across Saskatchewan. I've been even to the far north as well, to Black Lake. I have seen those. Those are beautiful places. I believe that we should raise more awareness, like we have a day of 30th September, the day for justice now, for the kids that have the things have been done. So I believe that raising awareness will help us all to learn more about Canada and how things are changing. Right now, we are standing on a place where it's multicultural. People are coming to Canada, learning about Canada, passionate about Canada, working for Canada, and that's how we can make our Canada more stronger. Thank you.
All right, moving on to closing remarks. Faaiq.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to this event. Your presence have made it more valuable. And I again thank you, the Cathedral Village, for giving me a chance to come and speak. The second thing is I would like, being an accountant, I like to talk in numbers, so I would like to add a little more about our city's current situation. Right now in 2020, our city have a loan of around 360 million. By the end of 2024, it will go up to 437 million. And that's like adding more interest and more compound. I personally believe they are taking good decisions, but there are some decisions that can be redone, that needs more attention. And again, coming back, that I am a person who believes more in saving and spending on good times. So one of the reasons, as I mentioned, I'm committed to work as a full-time person. I'm coming up to spend my full energy and my full knowledge to help out the things. I'm not part of the council, so there are so many things that we don't know. If we become part of the council, then yes, I can definitely look on those things in a deeper way as well. And on the other thing, I would like to one more thing. I would like that if city of Regina can increase the budget for the culture, that will be like more inclusive for other people who are part of the city. Increasing the budget for the culture will also support the tourism in Regina. We have over 7,000 employees for tourism. So that thing will bring more businesses to the Regina as well. And it will add more value for us. Thank you.
Well, first, thank you for coming. I enjoyed your perspective this evening, and grateful to everyone who lends their voice and also their time. I know how you have a 4-year-old son, I have a 9-year-old daughter. I know how much time it takes to door knock. It's a distinct privilege, really, and I view it as a deep responsibility to have the opportunity to represent my community where I was raised, and I don't take that lightly. My daughter Lydia is at the back, and she has some brochures she's going to hand out. I remember as a kid walking on protests in front of the legislative building with my parents, and I have taken my daughter door knocking. We've talked, yes, about infrastructure, but we've talked about our neighbors, what's wonderful about our community, the things we have to work on in our community. I would ask those of you here today, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, when we talk about engagement, I don't have all the answers, right? But when I look at the Cathedral area in Ward 3, we have creative people, we have knowledgeable people, Utah University, right? There's a lot of knowledge here. And when we work together, really everything's kind of figure outable. I would just say, lastly, in my closing statement, that I think we all believe and understand that important decisions happen at the local level. But there's a very organized and well-funded group of individuals that under, again, the guise of austerity and affordability are running a campaign that, in my view, will set our community backwards. I believe that you invest in the community that you want to live in. So yes to fiscal responsibility, but also yes to investing into infrastructure. And so I think that we have to continue to talk to our neighbors. We have to use our voice. We have to use our ideas. But if we don't do so, we will face a community in 10 years from now where we may have an infrastructure deficit that has doubled, and it's frankly become an unlivable community. So in closing, I'm really humbled and honored to be here today to see a lot of familiar faces. I don't claim to know all the answers, but I'd be very honored to earn your vote on November 13th, and pleasure to share the stage with you. Thank you.
All right, that ends our event tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, thanks everyone for coming out tonight, and